Hello, everybody. This is a Lamley Saturday Showcase. It's our chance to do a deep dive into some sort of diecast-related topic. And today, we're talking JDM. JDM, Japanese Domestic Market. It is a very, very loose and erroneous term when you actually think about it for Japanese cars among Hot Wheels collectors. We will say we're in the JDM era. If Hot Wheels puts out a Japanese car that could have been completely US-based, we'll still call it JDM when it comes to this era of collecting. Doesn't matter. That's what we call it. That's what it is. That's fine. And what I've got in front of you, especially here in this front row here, are many of the icons of the quote-unquote JDM era. Many that ushered in this era that collectors are so wild about right now. And it's really cool to see. To me, it's about filling in gaps that have been existing in the Hot Wheels lineup for years, and I'm so happy to see it just adds to the overall variety of the Hot Wheels lineup. But when did this era start? Well, there's several arguments. Some people say it's 2006 because this is the first casting that Junimai did, the first Japanese car casting that Junimai did, the A86 Corolla. And they say since Jun had such a heavy influence in bringing in this era, and he's a Hot Wheels designer if you didn't know, and he's since left about a year and a half ago, then why not go with his first casting? Others will argue that it was the 510. The 510 is such a iconic casting now, causes a frenzy anytime it's released. That first one was released in 2009, but it was not much of a thing at the time. It hung on the pegs for, in some cases, years before they were all purchased. Some will argue that it was this one, the 510 wagon, based on Jun Imai's car, that brought it in because people were always trying to find it. Kind of took on a life of its own. For me, the two Skylines, the Yokosuka Skyline, the Kenmari Skyline and the Yokosuka Skyline, which were released in the basic range within a few months of each other, to me, that was the, I'd say, most out of right field or left field choice for a Hot Wheels. Many people knew what a Skyline was, but they really didn't know the heritage of the Skylines, and to see two older classic Skylines being released in the Hot Wheels lineup was such a surprise, and I think was the door opener for many to kind of learn more about JDM, the actual JDM in Japanese cars and the history of Japanese cars, and now we're in the middle of it. So what happened before this JDM era? Well, of course Hot Wheels was doing Japanese cars. They did the Z-Wiz back in the 70s. We saw some of these cars that we still see now, like the Honda Civic or the Nissan Skyline R34, which we see released quite a bit. How about the 240Z, which we see released a bit. The R32, which has slowed down a bit, especially with the new R32 casting. These were around, but they were kind of just filler in a way. They were cool castings, but they didn't generate much interest back in the time that they were being released as this JDM era really took off. But Hot Wheels has always been doing Japanese cars. And I want to give a shout out to a viewer named John Farrell. John's a cool dude. I've seen his name before. He's been reading the blog. Since it started, he's been a viewer of the YouTube channel. And I got a package from John, not just a day or two ago. And inside was just a variety of older Hot Wheels Japanese cars. And he sent this gift, and he thought that it would be very interesting for me to show Lamley viewers some of the Japanese cars that Hot Wheels was doing well before the quote-unquote JDM era. I thought that was a cool idea. Now, I'm not asking you guys to send me cars. Please actually don't, because I can't guarantee that I can do a video. But this one, I think, can be very, very interesting. And I want to thank John for this. He wants me to rip these open, so that's what we are going to do. You may not like any of these cars. Totally. You may not. I wouldn't be surprised if you don't. But they're interesting. They come from a different Mattel era with Hot Wheels, but I think it's kind of cool to see. So here's the thing. I know nothing about these. I'm learning about them right now. So we're going to look at them, we're going to open them, and I might just say, neat, and move on. And if you want to do a deeper dive, jump onto eBay, go online, see what you can find out. John might be a great source. Maybe once I can get his Instagram or something like that, and you guys can talk to him about some of these cars. There's some great Hot Wheels experts out there, Mike Zarnock being one that many people know, that could really fill in some of the history of some of these cars. But let's just get right to it. This is the Mazda MX-5 Miata. We know that we're seeing an MX-5 Miata now. Hot Wheels released a new one this year, but did you know they've already done one? And it's this casting right here. Now, we're looking at some decos. I'm not going to make too many comments on the decos because, like I said, it's a different era. But, you know, we're going to learn. You might be surprised some of these castings. We'll take a look at the back of the card because it gives us a chance to kind of see what Hot Wheels looked like back in the day. You don't even see a barcode on this one. We'll try and figure out what years they were. This one says 1991 there on the back card. You can see all this stuff. Oh, there's a barcode right there and some writing on it. I don't want to get too much, like I said, I don't know too much about it, but that is the Mazda MX-5 Miata, which I think is kind of cool because the Miata was a big deal when it was released. Hot Wheels did one. But I think they've done a better one since with Ryo Asada taking it on this year. Another one, 1998, first edition, Pikes Peak Celica. You know where Pikes Peak is? You know the legend of the Pikes Peak and cars driving up that road. And Hot Wheels made a replica of the Pikes Peak Celica. This one has a plastic spoiler on it attached to the base of the car. And I think it has something, I think it's loosely attached to the interior of the car. That's why it's white. We've seen a premium version of this from the RCR, the Hot Wheels Road Racer. No, was it Road Racer? Off-Road from the Hot Wheels Racing Premium series from several years ago. It followed Vintage Racing. And that one's actually, I think, a decent replica of the actual Pikes Peak Celica. This one is just a casting with different deco on it. But this one has the licensed Pennzoil deco on it, which is kind of cool. Next one. From 2001, first editions, it is a Toyota Celica. This one, well, first off, this is an era of Celica that I personally am not a huge fan of. Didn't like it squared off back when I saw it back when it was first released. But this is a decent replica of it. It looks a little tuned. It looks a little too tall, not as sleek as it probably should be. But plastic spoiler. Clearly a racing version. You can see this one really kind of has a vibe of some of the cars that are released now. This one was, what, 18 years ago? That Toyota Celica. Of course, we've seen, what, at least one casting since then. All right. How about the Isuzu Via Cross? Trying to look for the year on this one. I'm not seeing it. There it is. This is also 2001. These were cars that, actually this is a pretty decent replica of a pretty awful looking car. I don't know what else to say, but they did a replica of it. This is, like you think about Walter White's Pontiac Aztec, that kind of era, kind of those weird cars. Speaking of weird, another, I think this was a concept. First edition from 2002. It is the Honda Sprocket. Kind of a pickup truck kind of concept. Don't know what else to say about that one. We saw it released a few times. Boy, I don't even know how to comment on that one. But let's keep in that concept range because then we have a 2004 first edition Suzuki GSX-R/4. I'm assuming that was a concept. Well, I mean, I never saw this thing on the road. 5-dot wheels. Metal and plastic is this casting. Plastic base. Again, if we've seen these in the last 5 years, we may have. I just don't pay attention to cars like this. It's interesting, too, to look at these because part of this is like, yeah, these were the Japanese cars that Hot Wheels was doing at the time. When you had cars looking at that background, like the Skylines and, some of the cool Datsuns and everything, and yes, they weren't generating the interest but at the time, but you could have been doing cars like that and you do the Suzuki GSX-R/4. Definitely a different era. It's funny to celebrate these, but then also even if you try and celebrate them, you're like, ugh. All right. We had the Pikes Peak Celica. We also get the Pikes Peak Tacoma. This one is from the All-Terrain series. I don't think this is the first edition of the Tacoma, but this is a neat casting. 2003. TRD on the, it's kind of neat to see the TRD logo on there. But I think we've seen some that have a little bit more of the racing colors, like the actual Toyota racing colors on it, although yellow is a pretty accurate color. So that's a cool casting. That's one that I think if it were put back in the main line, I don't think you'd want to put it in car culture, but if we're put in the main line, I think people would find it interesting. Okay, a couple of really good ones here that I think people will like. And we've seen this. It's been a while since we've seen this one. This is one you could definitely release now and generate some interest. From 2003, this is the first editions of the Honda Civic. They're saying Honda Civic. I don't know if it's, yeah, it's only labeled Honda Civic, but this one you can see is the S. I mean, obviously SI on the deco. Was this based on the Type R? I don't know if it was or not, but this is a cool casting. I have one that I think was a faster than ever from about 2006. But yeah, Hot Wheels released this one in 2003, and I would think if they released it now, if they still had the tool, I think collectors would be very, very interested in it. Tool is the term for the mold, I guess, is the way to put it. And it's if the mold doesn't exist or the tool doesn't exist, you're not making these castings. You'd have to redesign them from scratch. All right, another concept. Acura HSC Concept from the 2005 first editions. I think we saw this one as a faster than ever as well. This is when I really got back into collecting. This art, it kind of brings back memories of when I started buying things up. And this one, the Acura HSC Concept, which I think became the NSX Concept, which is, you know, slowly but surely evolved into the NSX that we see now. Obviously, it's a little bit different, but this is a nice casting. You got the details on the back, you got the details on the front. I think part of the window piece or interior is the for the headlights. I have no idea what kind of interior this one has because it's hard to see, but I think it's there. Kind of an ugly car, but I think that one really kind of fits in nicely. Those of you who like those cars, like especially the NSX, that's a good one to have. How about a couple of Mitsubishi Eclipses? Another one that I think would get people excited. 2004 first editions. Convertible Mitsubishi Eclipse. This is from the tuner era, isn't it? You can see all the details are there. Again, I don't want to see this one in car culture. Well, I guess we kind of had it in the Fast and Furious because I think isn't it the same? Is this the same generation? Actually, no, it's not because the taillights are different. I'm not a huge expert on the Mitsubishi Eclipse. But this one's decent, right? It's a decent version. Maybe a little bit tuned because the wheels are a little bit too big. But something I think some collectors would like. And that's not the only Eclipse they did. They also did in 2005, they released the Mitsubishi Eclipse Concept. So this, I think, was the concept that led to the last generation of the Mitsubishi Eclipse. This orange version looks good. It looks stock. Now, I think that Matchbox did a better version of this one. But this one, because this one's a little bit too tuned, the wheels are, once again, are too big. If they used smaller wheels on this one, I think it would look better. But they were doing this at the time. They did an Audi R8 about the time that had these same kind of proportions. Almost looked like they were on wagon wheels. But it's a cool casting. I know I've heard a lot of people that are actually quite big fans of it. All right, 2 more, and then we are done. We can put this video right under 15 minutes. This one's cool. Now we're going way back, thanks to John. What year is this? It doesn't say on the front, so we're going to look on the back. Once again, 1991. So I don't know if this is 91 or 92 when this was done. You can look at the art there. Try and just kind of, there we go. You can look at it a little bit more there. But this is the Lexus SC400. You want to see how much Hot Wheels was back in that era? 68 cents. Wouldn't that be cool? Not that you could complain about them being 94 cents. From almost, what, 30 years ago? I guess it would be. Yeah, almost 30. That's pretty amazing that the cost is still the same. This one does have a plastic base. I think it is. But this is the Lexus SC400. There's not much in terms of detail on this one. But they weren't putting a ton of detail on these. I think they were really trying to figure out how to do graphics. So you only have the Hot Wheels logo on the back. But this is a neat casting. I know a lot of people. I've seen some people that have customized it, made it a little bit more modern looking. And to finish off, I think from that same era, I'm going to say this is number 122. New model. Wasn't called a first edition back then. Well, this one is 1990, so the year before. Take a look at the back of this card. We could cut that out and send it in, but I don't think Mattel would honor it. But it is the Toyota MR2 Rally. Another one that, like, the wheels are old and dated. They look a little bit out of proportion, but if you were to put some of the newer models on this one, I bet some people might like to have this Toyota MR2. And this one looks good. in the Toyota racing colors. It's a decent model. And I think when it fits within the theme of JDM or Japanese cars, at least, cars that people would get excited about. Like, it would fit in nicely with, say, the 180SX and things like that. There you go. John, thank you. These are cool. If anything, whether you like these cars or not, and some of those are ridiculous, like the Isuzu Via Cross or whatever, it's a cool bit of history, especially for those that like to gobble up the JDM models that Hot Wheels is putting out now. Pre-JDM era, pre-Junimai era. A lot of these from the early aughts and then the 90s. It's really cool to see. You guys tell me what you think. Tell me if any of these are models that you want and that you might pursue collecting, because some of them are really cool historic pieces. John, thank you so much for letting us do this. Hopefully the viewers are thanking you too for seeing this kind of video. We're nerding out on this one. I wish I could give you better explanations, but it's all new to me too. But it was fun to look at these. Thanks, everybody. Bye.